Ritse Klink here on stage. You are part of our sponsor Beezy. First of all, thank you for the support for the conference. And I asked you to take a little bit also the perspective of how to drive adoption. And then in the preparation of this talk, we came into the discussion that you are very much critical about just driving adoption, and then we agreed on that you're pointing out your view, and then we discuss also with the room about this.
Okay. Don't spoil my slides yet. So thank you, Bjorn, for having us here. So the introduction I'll be doing is about the key drivers of adoption. So you've built a social collaboration tool or an enterprise social network. You're offering it to your employees. Why don't users just come? First of all, adoption rarely happens all at once. It takes a while. People need to be convinced to change their habits, to change how they work. And you need to explain them what's in it for them. Why should they be using the new tool? Why should they be changing the way they work? And last but not least, the solution has to be worth adopting. So if this isn't, if these criteria are not being met, then there will be no user adoption. But like Bjorn already mentioned, user adoption, it's not worth measuring or focusing on, I would say. So instead of measuring user adoption, you should be measuring and focusing on results that your solution, that your tool, your ESN, your digital workplace or intranet 2.0, whatever you want to call it, what business outcomes do they have? So if we're not going to talk about adoption, why are we here then? What are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about results and about measurable results. Adoption is not an end game. So that's why I was having this debate with Bjorn. Okay, I can go up here and talk about how you should drive adoption and what a community manager can drive adoption, but that should not be the purpose, and it's not the end game of deploying a digital strategy or deploying a digital enterprise. So what are results? This morning, Stanley at Vodafone, the Beezy case study, already gave some really nice examples of bringing back response times, support response times from 48 hours to 11 minutes, for example. So that's a concrete result. There's a few more on the slide here. He also mentioned that the return on investment was within 10 months after deploying Beezy. I mean, that's also a measurable result. So if you deliver and communicate, preferably through storytelling and sharing these case studies with the rest of the organization, adoption will come. So not focus on adoption, focus on results and communicating results, and communicate the results of tangible stories in your organization. So secret number 2, adoptable solutions, they solve measurable problems. And this has been talked about this morning as well. It's about focusing on use cases. So focus on real enterprise collaboration challenges. What is going to make the employees' life easier, simpler, more effective, more efficient? And here are just a few examples of challenges a sales team is working with, a product development team is working with, customer support. Again, that's the one Stanley mentioned this morning. So if you can find really stories and use cases and case studies that relate to the day-to-day life of your employee, then you will finally get adoption. And the last secret I want to share with you, that's also not new. I've been hearing that a couple of times already, that it's all about change in the end. And one really important thing, what I've seen with the Beezy implementations and also with Vodafone, that's what Stanley mentioned this morning as well, the town hall use case where the CEO is having weekly Q&A or monthly Q&A sessions with the complete workforce of Vodafone, is that leaders, they model the behavior. So they should lead by example. So if there's no involvement by leaders, there's no commitment by employees. That's my take on adoption, Bjorn.
Great. Thank you, Ritse Klink. Yeah, that's a good way to do. Now we want to enter this into a workshop style. Also, ask your opinions on this. So Ritze's opinion on this is really we cannot drive. Well, it doesn't make sense to enforce any community and adoption management practices if we don't have a purpose behind it. So we have to turn around the wheel. Is that right?
Yeah.
So are there any other ideas in the room also? Because I disagree a little bit with him on this point. Certainly we need the purpose up front, but at the end we also need to support the enablement of the adoption, because not everybody is seeing what is in for me only by seeing there's a purpose behind. So that's my point of view. And but maybe there are also other points of view in the room on this. Any views? Yes.
Chris Copeland, Better Working. Hi there. Yeah, just curious about so you talk about the kind of use case concept, which I fully agree with. Do you have any sort of best practices, recommendations for how you actually go about discovering those and kind of what you do, how you kind of work with those? So again, get the concept. I'm just wondering how you go about doing it.
Yeah, that's kind of a difficult question for me to answer. We had this discussion over lunch. We focus specifically on providing the technology, which is just a small part of the solution and not even the most important part. We all agree that it's about finding ways of changing the behavior of people, and normally that's where our partners come in, who know the business of our customers and potential customers, and who know the business drivers and the business processes of our customers. And they define the use cases. Of course, we have a set of standard use cases that I just showed a few of on the slide around sales, onboarding, support, customer support, R&D. But it needs to be analyzed on a case-by-case study. You need to identify where this particular organization can save most of the cost or increase their profit. There's no silver bullet. Of course, there's some guidelines that we share, but that's the real implementation and investigation is done by our partners who do the implementation and people and change bit of this process.
But isn't this already this approach? And well, certainly you don't have a methodology then, but still I'm try to argue with this on this point, where that we just need a use case and then everything is fine. I don't see this point, because maybe also the as we heard.
I'm not saying that just the use case then we are fine. I'm saying that we shouldn't stare on adoption only, measuring adoption. Don't get me wrong, adoption is really important. Of course, you get the network effect if everybody in your company is using the tool, but it shouldn't be a goal on itself.
But especially for finding and assessing the use case, the right use case where we can create value that we can measure at the end, don't we need a systematic approach on this? And this systematic approach would be already for me a kind of adoption practice.
Was there a question?
No, yes, in regards to the point that certainly we have to find this use case, but you distinguish finding this use case from the adoption practice. So that's what I see. That certainly a right approach to adoption is always starting with the use case and then enabling people, well, making real value out of this use case and well, helping them on the way to it.
And finding, everybody in the end needs to find his or her personal use case and how they're going to adopt the digital workplace or new intranet to make their day-to-day life more fun, more engaging, more effective.
Yeah.
Just to sort of add to that, so I mean, in some ways I think you can sort of look at use cases. You have adoption. You need people using. You need activity and adoption for any use case to come about. A use case is almost often a different perspective on the same thing. It's a collection of people active, but with a clearer purpose, if that makes sense. So, I mean, I sort of sometimes see it a bit like that. That you have, you won't get any use cases being achieved without people actually adopting and using the platform. If that kind of makes sense too.
That makes sense.
So there are sort of different perspectives on the same thing.
You need to give them some ideas and provide them with some guidelines of how they could use the tool, what they could be doing. So in that way, a use case or use cases could guide them into adopting new technology.
So I guess it's like not one or the other.
That's another.
So instead of talking about adoption, this whole workshop is about use cases then. No?
Yeah.
How do you feel about not only having these huge, useful, beneficial, money-giving use cases, but also the aspect of getting people more trained on the topic? When I was a girl, I had to write down for the billionth time the binomial formula because I had to learn it. Like pupils before, and I really would recommend not only to look on the benefit money-wise you get out of use cases, but also that we need to learn and to adapt this new style of working to our daily work. Perhaps if they are on the millenniums, they know how to make it. But even if they come to us, we have to train them to use the platform working and the community working. They know Facebook and WhatsApp and so on, but they do not know how to work perhaps in these groups and to behave there. And we learned that we need a lot of training groups, learning groups, and yes, we even had a sandbox group. Yeah. So, is it a combination? Would it be better to have a kind of combination? Yeah, sure, we need use cases. Yeah, but a combination and to figure out. Yes, we want to learn this new kind of work.
Yeah, we completely agree. It's not only about use cases. It's about having a community manager. It's about training. It's about changing the culture and the behavior, how people work and share. People should start sharing in the beginning, in the first place. So again, this was for me a way to explain that adoption only is not a useful measurement. Like use cases only is not a useful thing to focus on. Training, like you mentioned, is also important, is a piece of the puzzle, let's say. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Ritse Klink.